Hey there, hi there, ho there, it's Wispapedia. With Onslaught and Into the Light just around the corner, I'm getting really excited about all the different stuff we're going to get to try out. One of the things I'm most excited about when it comes to a Horde mode is going to be trying out and tweaking builds to see how effective they'll be. Of course, we don't know exactly what will be the strongest stuff to throw at the new activity, but I've got a few setups that I'm excited to try out. Today I'm going to focus on Warlock builds. The last couple days I've done videos for Titans and Hunters. I'll also suggest a few different weapons and perks to pair with these builds as well, though they'll probably be pretty similar to some popular GM builds. But I'm going to focus a bit more heavily on ad clear than DPS for most of these. I'm also going to try to avoid overly obvious setups like Solar Warlock with a Well and Phoenix Protocol. Everyone knows Well is going to be a must-have. We're going to try to think a little outside of the box. Most of these will also be pretty versatile, so you can swap out aspects, fragments, and mods to your heart's content. Also, the weapons you use will depend a lot on what kind of champions are in Onslaught. Some flexibility will be necessary there. Alright, let's get started. For our first build, we're going to be working on freezing everything as much as we can. Osmiomancy gloves are going to help with this tremendously. Not only will they power up the Cold Snap grenade and give an extra charge, but they will also allow Cold Snap to chain from one enemy to another. They also give you grenade energy when they freeze a target. Both builds will have a slightly different seasonal mod setup today, so we're going to talk about that here. We will be using Kindling Trigger and Flint Striker. Kindling Trigger allows solar weapons to deal Scorch while Radiant, and Flint Striker gives you Radiant after landing rapid solar precision hits or rapid solar final blows. For our Stasis setup, we're going to use Torch, which allows us to deal increased weapon damage to combatants affected by Strand and Stasis debuffs. Then we will use Pillar of Ice, which will spawn Stasis crystals when you defeat a frozen target. Lastly, we will use Hail of the Storm, which will deal extra damage when shattering frozen targets and Stasis crystals. It will also release Shards of Ice that damage and slow targets when you shatter crystals as well. For the abilities, we will use a Healing Rift. I like Strafe Glide for the maneuverability, and of course Penumbral Blast is our only Stasis melee. We're going to use the Cold Snap grenades since we are using Osmiomancy gloves. The aspects we will use are Glacial Harvest and Ice Flare bolts. Glacial Harvest creates stasis shards when you freeze enemies. These will restore melee energy when you pick them up. Ice Flare bolts spawn stasis seekers that freeze other nearby targets when you shatter a frozen target. We're looking for any and every way that we can freeze enemies. These two play off of each other very well, but you could absolutely put the Bleak Watcher turret aspect on if you want. I use the stasis turrets a lot though, so I wanted to use something different this time. For fragments, we're going to be using Whisper of Shards, Whisper of Conduction, Whisper of Fissures, and Whisper of Hedrons. Whisper of Shards allows our grenade to recharge more quickly after shattering a stasis crystal. We will be creating and breaking a bunch of stasis crystals, so this will help us keep our grenade up if we're running out of them. Whisper of Conduction pulls stasis shards to your position, and it also grants 10 resilience and intellect. Whisper of Fissures increases the damage and size of the burst of stasis when you destroy a stasis crystal or defeat a frozen target. Again, we will be freezing and destroying a ton of enemies, so buffing that will be very helpful. Lastly, Whisper of Hedrons dramatically increases a ton of stats, and since we're going to be freezing enemies as much as possible, this will more or less always be up. It's basically just a permanent buff for this build. For our mods, Harmonic Siphon is one of my favorite mods if you didn't already notice, also Heavy Ammo Finder because it's helpful. I have 3 Impact Induction mods equipped because I want to make sure that my grenades stay active. Impact Induction gives grenade energy on powered melee hits, and the plan is to keep the melee up as much as possible. I have 2 Harmonic Reserves up because I'm running a Stasis Heavy. On my legs, I'm running Invigoration, Innervation, and Absolution. Invigoration gives melee energy when you pick up an Orb of Power, Innervation gives grenade energy when you pick up an Orb of Power, and Absolution gives you energy towards all of your abilities when you pick up orbs. Lastly, I have 3 Bomber mods equipped because I really just want to make sure I always have access to my grenade. Bomber gives you grenade energy when you use your class ability. This might be a little bit of overkill, but it's fine. The mods are mostly set up to make sure that you have access to the Stasis toolkit, which is an incredibly powerful toolkit. For this video, I'm using Augur's Scepter. It's really fun because it spreads slow to nearby targets when you get a final blow with it. It's nice to spread the freeze and slow effects. It works really well in this build as it can freeze enemies as well. My energy weapon is Igneous Hammer. The Lost Sector I ran for this video did have unstoppable champions, so that's why I'm running this hand cannon. It has Golden Tricorn and Rapid Hit. It allows me to have access to Flint Striker, which is mainly why I'm using it. If I were to swap this out, I'd probably use another solar primary in this spot. My heavy here is Reed's Regret. Because it's Stasis, it's easy to build into having more reserve ammo from the harmonic reserves. It's also fairly strong, so it's nice for single target DPS. I'd love to be able to use my Cold Steel Chain Reaction Slammer here. It would play into this build so well. Unfortunately, the barrier champs were destroying me, so I needed to switch to something long range. Other weapons I'd recommend would be anything with Chill Clip or Headstone. Chill Clip would be great to freeze targets and deal a bunch of extra shatter damage. Headstone would also give me the opportunity to create even more crystals, so that would be pretty great to keep damage and stasis crystal generation up. Overall, this build feels incredibly strong. It's really fun and the crowd control it offers is pretty ridiculous. The base Shadebinder kit is one of the strongest in the game, and it feels really good to push it even further. I love using Stasis Warlock in PvE. Alright, let's talk about the Strand build. Can you guess what we're going to be doing with Broodweaver? Can you? I bet you can. Yeah, we're going to be using a bunch of Threadlings, and of course we're going to be using the Swarmers, which are exotic Warlock boots that will cause Tangles to unravel targets and spawn Threadlings. We're going to be using the Solar Seasonal mods again, and Torch. This time though, we're going to be using Unraveling Orbs, which gives Strand weapons unraveling rounds when you pick up an Orb of Power. And we're also going to use Horde Shuttle, which will spawn a Threadling when you damage unraveled targets with a weapon. For the abilities, we will use the Healing Rift again, your choice of glide. We will use the Arcane Needle in this build as well. And of course, we're going to use the Threadling Grenade. Don't forget that Arcane Needle will unravel targets, and if you deal damage to unraveled targets, you'll be spawning more Threadlings. The aspects we will use are Mind Spun, Invocation, and the Wanderer. Mind Spun Invocation enhances your grenades so that they will deal more damage. You could also consume the Threadling Grenade to generate 5 perched Threadlings. The Wanderer is great because it will allow you to suspend targets when you throw or destroy Tangles. Your Threadlings will also create Tangles if they defeat an enemy. The fragments will be Thread of Rebirth, Thread of Evolution, Thread of Generation, and Thread of Finality. Thread of Rebirth will allow you to create Threadlings on Strand Final Blows. More Threadlings. Thread of Evolution buffs all of your Threadlings, which we will be creating a bunch of. They'll deal more damage, it's great. Thread of Generation will grant grenade energy when you deal damage. You'll be doing a lot of damage, so this will help us have more uptime for the Threadling Grenade. Lastly, Thread of Finality will spawn Threadlings on Finisher Final Blows. Even more Threadlings! For the mods, I'm going to use 2 Harmonic Siphons as per usual. Cheap and effective. Great stuff. Also, Heavy Ammo Finder because it's helpful. I'm going to put on 2 Grenade Kickstart mods. This will help keep the Threadling Grenade up as often as possible. I have a Harmonic Reserve on to give my Tusk of the Boar more ammo, and it could work for my heavy weapon if I'm using a Strand one as well. I have an Elemental Charge mod active as I'm hoping to be spawning Tangles often. This will play into the Grenade Kickstart mods, which will help keep the grenades up often. I also have 2 Innervation mods, which grant grenade energy every time you pick up an Orb of Power. Lastly, I have 3 Bomber mods equipped because they will reduce the grenade cooldown when you activate the Healing Rift. For my kinetic weapon in this video, I'm using Tusk of the Boar. I can't say enough about how well Tusk plays into the Strand subclass for herbs. It can help to apply so many debuffs to enemies, and it's a ton of fun to mess around with. If you have one with Slice and or Hatchling, it will be very helpful. I'm using Igneous Hammer again to take advantage of the Solar Seasonal mods. It's also because of the Unstoppable Champions again. As an aside, when you have Radiant, your weapons will be given anti-barrier capabilities as well. It's really helpful if you're struggling with those champions. In my heavy slot, I'm still using Dragon's Breath. It's going to be great for Ad Clear and Onslaught, as I'm sure enemies will be grouped up a bit. It covers such a wide area of effect, and I just like lighting everything on fire. I could put on a Strand heavy weapon to keep reaping the benefits of unraveling rounds and other Strand perks as well. Other perks I'd look for are anything with Hatchling. Since we're building into Threadlings, Hatchling will be extremely potent with this build. Slice is also helpful as you can keep unraveling a bunch of enemies with it. Strand has so many interesting interactions, and I highly recommend playing around with those weapons as much as you can. I'm not sure if you got the memo, but I'm a verified Strand enjoyer. It's probably my favorite subclass we've gotten in Destiny 2. There's so many interesting builds you can make, and I really love playing around with it. This build is really potent, and it's just a lot of fun to create a little army of buddies that hunt down your enemies. I definitely recommend playing around with Strand if Ad Clear is slowing you down in Onslaught. Alright, there you go. 2 Warlock builds for Onslaught. I hope you enjoyed this video and are looking forward to Onslaught as well. Today's the day. Hope to see y'all enjoying Into the Light. Hey, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Tell me in the comments about what builds you're bringing to Onslaught and do the usual YouTube things.
like and sub.
Follow me on Twitch to catch more of my Destiny stuff. Also, check out the Dojo Discord and my own personal Discord server, The Lantern. If you're looking for folks to play games with, I can't recommend a better community than these two. There are a bunch of lovely people there, and I've made a bunch of great friends who play a number of different games together. I definitely recommend checking us out. Thanks again for watching. Make sure you drink your water, get good sleep, and take care of yourselves. And I'll catch you next time.